Hi team, welcome to the Kindness, Curiosity and Comfortable Shoes podcast. My name is James McFetrich and this is an ongoing toolkit for all healthcare staff. Whether you are a porter or a paediatrician, a domestic or a driver, clinical or non-clinical, just starting or just finishing your work in healthcare, this podcast aims to give you some useful thoughts about working for this amazing business to get you through your day. Before we start today's episode, I'll be so grateful if you could do one thing for me. If there is anything in these episodes that helps you in your day-to-day work as a healthcare worker, please tell your friends and colleagues so they can benefit from it too. I'd be so grateful if you could do that to really help grow this podcast. Thank you. This episode is all about joy. So the definition of joy is a feeling of great pleasure and happiness. And it's easy to think, where would there be any joy in healthcare? Often we're breaking bad news, dealing with suffering, managing acute or chronic illnesses that will have a short or possibly a long-term or lifetime impact on the patients we are involved with and their families. And every day we're managing diagnoses as a team, whether we are treating people, looking after people, diagnosing people, or just part of the group of staff that are helping someone manage these diagnoses that can be life-altering, life-threatening, or indeed life-ending. But I thought it would be useful to think a little bit about joy and that feeling of pleasure and happiness, because there are nuggets in healthcare that can be incredibly joyful. The successful delivery of a child, a cancer in remission. You may have seen those images of people ringing a bell once they've finished their last treatment for cancer. Maybe even confirmation that the diagnosis that you thought you had is proven not to be there. That's a joyful thing to be celebrated. And even in those really most desperate times, when we know what the outcome will be, say in palliative care, being able to help with someone's last wishes and the joy of perhaps sharing a laugh or a joke with a patient or someone's family just to brighten someone's day. And it's not necessarily inappropriate. Obviously, the timing needs to be right, but there can be joy in all aspects of healthcare. However, sometimes we need to be perhaps more aware of it and sometimes maybe try to make it a little more obvious. For myself, I have to say, and maybe it's my Britishness, I always feel a little bit uncomfortable if there is joy that's outwardly experienced at work. Say, for example, when I'm truly thanked and someone comes up to me and says, "Oh, thank you so much for something that you've done," I really just tend to brush it off. I can't kind of cope with it. Well, it was nothing. It's fine. I'm just doing my job. But I think when those things do happen, and when we do appreciate that connection and genuine joyfulness, maybe there is something about just leaning into it and pausing, just accepting that someone is wishing you nice thoughts and thanking them, and then spending some time reflecting on what that actually must mean to the patient for them to do that, and also reflecting on what that does to me as a clinician and how that may change things. From a workforce perspective, clearly if there is joy in work, there is a link to well-being of staff. And we know that joyful staff in general will be that much more engaged. They will definitely be more productive and be able to feel that they can appreciate the purpose of their work so much more. I know when I've had times in work where I've felt particularly down about the work that I'm doing and genuinely unhappy about it, it's really difficult to fully appreciate whether you're doing something worthwhile, and you lose possibly that purpose of what you're doing. So I wanted to have a look into how we sort of create that culture, because again, like all these episodes, I think we are all part of how we manage that culture. How can we create that environment? And I found a really nice piece of work from the Institute for Healthcare Improvement in the States. And there's a website that I'll put the link to in the show notes, because there's loads of things in there, lots of toolkits and interesting videos to watch. There are 4 things that really jumped out at me as being something that are really simple that we can do to try and improve how we approach work and how we can get a bit more joy at work. So firstly, some time off. Definitely having some space between your work life and your home life. When push comes to shove, when we are busy, not only will we be spending more time at work, but we also bring that work home, either physically or mentally. And making sure we get that time off is clearly going to be important, because then we can appreciate those better times at work so much more. One thing that is in this article is related to COVID and the issues from a few years back about the negative media that can be around healthcare. But hey, funnily enough, that carries on now post-pandemic. And the suggestion is absolutely to avoid negative media about your workplace. And for those of us in healthcare, it doesn't need to be specifically about the place, the doors we walk through on our way to work. But in the UK, it's the NHS in general. For wherever you work, it can be any aspect of healthcare. We can feel very personal about it, and it's very difficult not to take that on board. And it sounds easy to say and perhaps more difficult to do, but given the ubiquitous nature of the media and how we access it so easily. But trying to avoid that negative media about work is going to just help dampen down those negative thoughts. It's really important to get support for challenging times at work, both in and out of work. As I've said throughout this podcast, it is very difficult, very challenging to work in healthcare, but making sure that we have the support, seeking it out if it's not immediately there, and if you are in a position, in a more managerial position, making sure that the people that report to you do have that support for those challenging times, and it's not just a token email or poster up in the coffee room to say where to go if you are struggling. And then finally, and I guess we can take this outside of work as well, is just showing gratitude for life in general. There's something about being in that healthcare environment and seeing people at all stages of life coping with all sorts of difficult issues. And it's nice to reflect back, and if we are lucky enough to not have any of those things, just showing gratitude that we're not in the same state as some of the people that we come across at work. And even if you don't want to go as deep as that, there's still something about just showing gratitude and thanking others for things that they are doing. And it may just be normal, everyday part of their work, but we know that goes a long way to creating a better environment to work in and being a bit more joyful if we talk to people at work and thank them for what they're doing. So that's all advice from the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. For myself, well, it comes back to one of the key parts of this podcast. We can easily spread a little joy just by being kind to each other. As I said in that episode about kindness, episode 1, right at the beginning, if we just spread a little joy, if we just accept that we're all in this together, being kind to each other, thanking each other, will make other people feel better, but it'll also make ourselves feel better as well. And if you're really struggling with feeling joyful, well, it's okay. You can prime your brain, prime yourself to be happier. Some of you may have heard of this. This is the pencil in the mouth study. So what that does, and tried to look for the original study, and I can't find it, but there's loads of stuff about this on the internet, most famously replicated by the psychologist Daniel Kahneman at the World Economic Forum about 10 years or so ago. And basically, if you hold a pen or pencil in your mouth, just holding it by your teeth, then it forces your lips into a smile and forces your face to adopt an expression similar to when you are happy and joyful. And that has been shown that if you repeat that throughout your working week, then you will be happier at work, and that happiness spreads to other people. The flip side of that is that if you hold the pen or pencil vertically in your mouth, so you're just holding the tip of it with your lips and your teeth aren't touching it, that forces your face into a frown. And the outcome of that, funnily enough, is that you are less joyful and less happy. So if you really struggle, and let's face it, we probably all do, we really struggle to be happy at work every single day, the suggestion is that a few minutes at the start of your day, you hold a pencil horizontally in your mouth, holding it just with your teeth, forcing your face to smile, and that is priming your brain to hold that expression more frequently, more commonly as the day progresses. So there's some food for thought for you to try and be more joyful at work. Thank you for listening today. Let me know what you thought about this episode. I am on @JMacEducation on all the socials, and there are links in the show notes for anything that we've talked about today that may be of interest or further reading for you. I'd be really grateful if you could rate, review and subscribe, and most importantly, if you found this helpful, please tell your colleagues about this podcast. So please take care of yourselves out there. You are doing a great job, and remember, be kind, be curious, and don't forget your comfortable shoes. Thank you to Shakina Studio for the music, downloaded through Audio Jungle. Thank you to Beth for the artwork and the photo, produced through Canva. And thank you to Buzzsprout for hosting the podcast. The Kindness, Curiosity and Comfortable Shoes podcast is a JMac Education production.